All right, I want to welcome everybody to the Abington School Committee meeting on Monday, July 13th, 2020 at 10 a.m. As you know, these are continuing via Zoom until further notice. Everybody will be known as soon as we start. I know people have things to do. I have to work too, so let's jump into the agenda. The initial act we have to do is this is our first meeting since town elections. So our school committee policy and town charter require us to reorg at this time. So I'll be looking for a motion to authorize Lisa Augusta as the secretary and per our policy and town charter to act as temporary chair for the purpose of opening nominations and completing the election for the position of school committee chair. I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lisa, it is all yours.
I am chair. It's my moment of fame. Okay, so the process that will follow will be like this. First, I'll ask for nominations for chair. After all the nominations are made, I will ask for the members to vote for the nominees in order of which the nominations were made. And then the first nominee who has the majority vote of the full school committee will be elected as the chair. And then I'll be turning the meeting over to the chair, and then he or she will be chair the remainder of the meeting and the reorganization of the rest of the school committee. Okay, everyone's good?
Yes.
All right, so at this time, I'll take all the nominations for chair for the Abington School Committee.
I'll nominate Wendy Apple.
Okay.
I'll second.
I think first I need to, if there's any other nominations. Is there any other nominations?
Well,
Is Danielle trying to talk? Oh, no.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Can you not hear me?
No, I can
Now
hear
we
you.
can.
I said I nominate Chris Coyle.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. All right. So now I'll ask you to vote for the first nominee, Wendy Happel. Right? Am I doing this right?
Do we need to second both of us first?
Okay. All right.
I'll second Chris.
I'll second Wendy.
Okay.
There you go.
Don't put me in this first election pickle like last time.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I'm just kidding. All right. All right. So we'll ask for a vote for the first nominee, Wendy Happel. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
aye. So there's 3. Can you vote more than once on this?
No, you can only vote for one person, I think, but
Okay.
if you have 3, then it's done.
Okay.
Did you not get? I didn't. Are you hearing me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, I don't know if I heard you right. So for Wendy Happel, everyone, let's just go one by one, I guess, and see. All right. So I say aye.
Aye.
Jackie's aye.
Aye.
There's 3.
Yeah, do the rest just to have it for, I would say, for record.
Okay. Okay, so 3 for Wendy Happel, and then now I'll ask for.
No, just no. I mean, see, you got to get Danielle and Wendy's vote, I believe. That's
Okay.
Oh, I feel weird. I vote for myself or I say no? What do I do?
Oh boy.
You could abstain, or you could say yes or no.
Because I feel weird voting for myself. And Chris, I don't want you to have it. No, just kidding.
All right. So then Danielle.
I love you.
Aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous aside from Wendy's abstaining, that Wendy Happel is the new chair. Yay,
Would-
Wendy.
Go to Chris? No? Okay.
Okay, so now Wendy takes over as the new chair.
Okay, so at this time, I will take all nominations for vice chair of the Abington School Committee.
I'll nominate Lisa.
Okay. I will nominate Jackie. Oh, wait, do we go through that first? Is that the right way?
I don't know. We can either second at the time
Okay.
or we can second after.
Okay.
Your call.
Oh, thank you. I forgot that you were, I appreciate it. So do I have any other nominations for Anyone else for school committee vice chair? Okay, so I will now ask to vote for the first nominee, which was Lisa Augusta.
Was there a second to that nomination?
Was there a second to the nomination for Lisa Augusta? Okay, can I now go on to Jackie? Or what do I do? Does somebody want to second that for Lisa?
I can't, I made it.
So I'm seconding the nomination.
Sure,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm seconding
Okay.
it.
And now go to the next one.
Yes, and so do I have a second for Jackie?
I'll second it.
And all in favor for,
Nope, so
I go back to Lisa now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Now
all
there'll
in,
be a vote for the first person nominated,
Okay.
which was, yeah.
this is the hardest part. So let's go back to Lisa and do we have
and we just vote.
We should probably do a roll call vote, all
A
in
roll
favor
call?
for Lisa. That way you know what everybody's vote is, just for sure, in case there's a.
All right.
In the,
That sounds good. Can we get a roll call vote for Lisa Augusta for vice chair? Chris?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
And I'm going to say no. And then Jackie?
Oh, man. Yes.
Okay. Oh, you guys made me do that. And then can I have, so now is she just chair or do we have to go through that with Jackie? We don't do it.
you have a majority vote.
Okay, thanks.
So-
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so Lisa Augusta is now vice chair.
Can I just, I'm sorry.
By
Did
3.
did you get a vote? Did you get a roll call vote from everybody?
Oh, so all right, I'll say no for me.
Okay, so thank you. So it's 3-2 for Lisa Augusta being school committee chair, vice chair. All right. So at this time, I will take all nominations for secretary for school committee.
I'll nominate Jackie.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, so is everyone in favor of Jackie Abrams being secretary of school committee?
Yes for me.
Yes.
For me? Danielle?
Yes.
Yes. Jackie?
Yes, I'm in favor of myself as secretary.
Okay, so that is 5-0. So thank you, Jackie, and you are secretary of Abington School Committee.
Wendy,
Yes,
as new chair,
yes.
can I make a suggestion? I don't know where these original process protocol came from, but it seems disastrous every year. Is there a way we can check it with MASC? Is there an easier way to do this? It just feels very complicated and confusing. I thought it would be easier this year, and I don't know if anyone thinks it felt easier, but not to me.
I don't think it's easy.
It does. Yeah, it's directly, it's been vetted in the last 2 or 3 years. We could have it checked again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there shouldn't even be a second nomination because that's where the confusion comes in. It just seems to get tricky if we're in agreement, which we sort of came into this thinking about it. We've talked individually. So I don't know. I just feel like it's painful for the community to listen to. And it feels painful for me to participate in as well.
And every year it's painful for me too. So there's no reason we can't have it checked. So we'll do that.
Thank you, everybody. We do have to reorganize our subcommittees, so I will send everyone an email asking what interest they have, if that's okay, for our subcommittees. that work out for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're going to go on to the reading and approval of records. So that's our June 22nd meeting. And if you guys could read that over.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for June 22nd.
I'll second.
Okay, great. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we're going to go on to the June 10th school committee meeting minutes. Would anyone like to?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
Wait a minute. Oh, here they are. Oh, yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Awesome. So now we are going to go on to school committee resolution. We have a COVID-19 state funding recommendation. Do I read that? Or does everybody have it? Peter, I'm sorry. Do you know if I read
So
this?
everybody should have it, and it's in their packet, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Oh,
It's just
definitely.
looking for the schools to be funded in a way that we need during this critical time. This is something that school committees around the Commonwealth are considering, and then letters go to our state legislators asking for their support for the funding of our schools, pending your approval.
Okay.
I'm
So,
assuming you guys are going to want funding for schools.
So let's make a motion to decide whether we are going to follow through with doing this as well. So would anyone like to make a motion for the school committee resolution COVID-19 state funding so that we will receive funds from the state?
I'll make a motion to support the resolution.
I'll
That was-
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you.
Wendy,
Yes.
you're doing great.
Thank you.
I feel like this is such a hard transition. So like
It
give your, and we don't get to talk beforehand about like the specifics of the role. So I feel like it's helpful if you have questions to ask them here too, like about protocol and procedure. Like we don't expect you to know how to do everything.
Thank you.
So-
And I just came home from vacation at like 2:30 in the morning, so I'm not all there. But I appreciate that, Jackie. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the SEL reopening plan.
So if I could just for a second,
Yes.
sort of set the stage for this.
Yes.
Thank you. So we recognize that this is the most important thing we're going to do. Keeping kids safe is the most important thing, but in terms of the work we're going to do, other than keep people safe, this is the most important thing we're going to do, no matter what our reopening model looks like. And so in putting this together, we put this here in front of the initial reopening conversation because I think this is people need to hear about this first. Because when we get to the second piece, which is how it is that we're going to reopen, I won't have an answer for anyone on that today. But it's important that people understand that it's going to involve really 3 different values that we've talked about as an administrative team. And certainly these values, I think, need to be talked about in a way that's more broad with the committee and the community. But those 3 values in terms of making our decisions and some of the tough decisions we have to make, the first one being safety. The second one is social, emotional, and mental health and the well-being of our entire school community. And then the third one is the academics and the arts. And, the academics and the arts actually may be the way we best serve number 2, which is the social emotional piece. And that's by getting people into a thoughtful and exciting routine with their peers. and engaging in learning as very best as we can. And so just before James goes, if James could present this to the committee, he's done a lot of work with our principals already and members of the school community, our school psychologists, our mental health professionals. I want to just provide that backdrop.
Thanks.
I was going to say, Wendy, Peter and I, to Jackie's point earlier, Peter and I talked about the agenda on Thursday, but he just kind of hit it, but James was going to take this part anyway. So.
Awesome. He knows best. Please, James, are you with us?
Yep. Yeah, sorry, I had to step away for a minute, but I'm back in action. All right, so so there are a lot of questions, of course, about what the fall is going to look like. But one thing that our district is totally certain of is that we do want to prioritize the social emotional lives of our students. We just know that given the various crises that are going on, many of our students are going to be especially vulnerable during this time, and we're in a unique position in order to support them. Additionally, we know that staff are going to need support in this area as well, as well as the community at large. So as Peter alluded to, our district has set up a committee to really work through how we can provide more social emotional support as we transition back to school. Just to give you a quick overview of the composition of the group. So we have a building administrator from each building. We also have the school psychologist from each building as part of this meeting. We have our school adjustment counselor, our director of wellness, and myself. So it's a bunch of individuals who are able to lend various perspectives on how we can best support the social emotional lives of our students. So we've begun conversations on this topic, and what we've got so far through conversations, we've been able to come up with essentially like 11 action items, which are things that still need to be fully fleshed out as to what it will look like in each building, because what some of these supports will look like at Beaverbrook are going to look much different at the high school. But as a group, we've determined that these are important areas that we can be helpful to our students, staff, and community in terms of the social emotional area. So I'm just going to go through those items quickly. Feel free to raise any questions that you might have, or if I can elaborate in more detail, because I'm just going to kind of give the overview. So one of the first things that we know we have to do is additional training for staff on how to identify emotional distress in students and their colleagues and how they can best support students. So the idea is that we want them to just be more aware of when a student is experiencing some emotional distress and how to initiate conversation on that topic, and then to understand what they can do in their role as a teacher or paraprofessional or related service provider to provide some relief to that student. Because what is the case is that we're not in a position to enlarge our mental health staff. You know, we can't just hire a bunch of new school adjustment counselors, but we can provide support for our staff members so that they can provide some input to students to help them manage the emotional difficulties in their life. In addition to training the staff, we also think it's our responsibility to provide some training for parents. So we're hoping within sort of the first quarter of the year, we can pull together, we can create a community event where parents can come in, and either members of staff, you know, such as myself and others, or we can get an outside consultant to just provide some training to parents to say, okay, you know, here's how to recognize emotional distress in your child. Here's what you can say and do. Here's what the trajectory is likely going to look like. And here are the supports in your community that you can act on. So that was the second item that we thought could be helpful. Additionally, we know we need to provide instruction for students in this area. And this instruction specifically is how to cope with stressors related to these current events. How they can recognize like distress in their peers. And so if one of their classmates is really struggling, how they can notice that and then connect them to a teacher or a counselor to get more help. We want them to know how they can actually get help in the building. And we also know that we need to itemize just clear expectations on how to behave during this time. The next action item that we're going to work on to support the community going forward is we want to establish a communication protocol for staff at each building. Because what we know is when we get back to schooling, be it virtual, be it in person, is that there are going to be a lot of students showing some distress. So what we want to be clear on is what, if I'm a teacher, who can I reach out to say, hey, this student needs more support, and when should I reach out? Because we know we only have so many support staff available. So we want to make sure that staff are referring to the right person at the right time. And we know that we might also have to establish just new roles within our buildings for staff members to fulfill, like such as a grade level ambassador when it comes to mental health and so on. So we just want to we know that we have to review our communication protocol for vulnerable students and just make it really clear and ask ourselves how, if at all, we can enhance it to better support students.
Can we stop for a second?
Sure.
Hello. I don't know. I'm perhaps personally feeling overwhelmed, but you're presenting a lot of information, and I feel like I'm not sure that I know some of. I appreciate the work in the forward thinking about the next pieces, but you caught me at the point of like clear expectations for behavior. Do you mean by the students?
So that was brought up, yes, in terms of the students. So in general, and this is true of, from the behavior management lens, but also the social emotional lens. If we can be clearer on things such as how to comport ourselves, but also how to be a good friend, how to help a student when they're in need, how can I ask for help when I need it? The clearer we can be about behavioral expectations, the more that we're supporting our students and helping them to navigate sort of ambiguous situations.
So you're not talking specifically about like COVID or like safety precautionary behavior, or are you talking about just typical, this is the work we do typically in schools, is clear expectations for behavior? Because I guess my follow-up question to that is, I haven't even heard yet as a teacher or a parent in the town of Abington what the expectations are for students, right? So I think, I don't know, I don't want to be disruptive to the meeting, but I'm feeling like where we're at, and maybe the lack of visual, we usually have a PowerPoint or something to follow. Are we putting the cart before the horse? I don't know. Is anyone else feeling confused? I'm feeling a little confused because so much is unknown right now that I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain. I understand the idea.
Jack, you cut off. Jack, we couldn't hear the end of that. Jack, we couldn't hear the end of you talking. I don't know if you can hear me now.
I can hear you now.
Wendy's muted.
Could you back us up again, James? Like, what's the objective for today? The information you're presenting today is to help us know the social emotional plan for whatever it looks like when we return to school?
Yes. So what I'm saying, I'm giving a general update on the framework that we'll be using to provide mental health supports to student, staff members, and the community when we get back to school. So it's essentially a courtesy update, because the work that still needs to be done is saying, what exactly it will look like at the middle school, who will provide the support, when, at what frequency. So all of those details need to be worked out, but essentially, our staff has done some work to really think through how we can provide social, emotional, and mental health supports. And essentially what I was doing was going through what that framework was and saying, hey, we've got 11 areas that we're going to try to use this month and a half we have left to try to figure out some supports in each building.
Are those 11 areas in our packet?
No.
I guess I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time following. Maybe.
No, I agree with that. So what I knew initially was we were getting three. We were supposed to present to the state 3 ways of reopening, right? So it would be going back to school full time, going back and forth, whether we do like half at school, half, and then all full online at home learning. So I think that this is just to present that one piece if we go back to school full time. So maybe that should have came after the initial guidance reopening. Maybe that would have been a little more helpful. Go ahead.
Okay. So we've talked about the 3 different models that we would potentially come back to, and I was actually going to talk about that next. And the reason this is out of order is because no matter how we come back, social emotional is going to be key to the work we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether we come back full time or we come back hybrid, or even if we come back remotely, social emotional is going to be key in terms of what we are being called to do for our kids in whatever community we're in during a global pandemic. So I tried to really explain that in the intro, that this is more about almost like somebody cuts you off in traffic. We just want to raise our hand and say, we got it. We understand social emotional is going to be key to what we do when we return. And then I was going to talk about the other elements, because by geography, it's the most important thing we're going to be doing for kids next year.
And I completely agree with you. As somebody who requested there to be a subcommittee for social emotional learning, obviously I'm on board and appreciative of the focus. I just think that we have, to Wendy's point, 3 models to think about, one of which we're fooling ourselves if we don't think we'll be remote at some point, or a combination when this comes back in the winter around flu season. And so I think, to me, social emotional planning is so dependent on, we almost have to plan for it in 3 buckets. Are we back full time? What does that look like? Are we in hybrid? How do we support people there? And then how do we do remote learning and support kids better than we did during our crisis remote learning? Nobody in the state that I know of feels proud of their remote learning, what they rolled out. It was a desperation call. People asked us to do it and we did the best we could, and we learned some things. So again, James, I'm sorry, but maybe continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just trying to link my understanding of what you're sharing to where we are in our planning. And so that was the struggle for me. And I think it would have been helpful to hear. I can't visually hang on to the 11 pieces that you're talking about. So maybe if you could send us that in print or share, that would be helpful.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. And so Jackie, to your point, so yes, it remains to be seen what format we'll be instructing the majority of our students in the fall. But sort of what we've got here is just the framework of how we want to approach mental health supports. So if for example, we're entirely online, which just as a hypothetical, then we know that we'll be having to train students, parents, and staff online. But the important point is that we just want to make sure that we're actually training these individuals on this area. So kind of the framework we have can follow any format that we're going to follow. It's just that we've decided a number of areas that we can better support students, families, and community members during this time. So I'll just go through a few more items that just have come up in the group and for work that we can do to better support our students during the transition. One of which is sensitive messaging for students. So we're going to make sure to identify developmentally appropriate messaging and language that staff can use. Hold on one sec.
Just a little break.
He needs to be unmuted, Rich. So.
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing the summer school right now, and someone just came in to ask a question. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
All right. Yeah. So next up is that one idea that's come up that we're likely to pursue is identify a screening tool. So what happens, and this will be especially helpful at the secondary level, which is that we all, as staff members, we all see students each day. But it is, and we all kind of get a feel as to how they're doing. But at the secondary level, especially where students have multiple teachers during a day who get to spend less time with them, then we would like to use a screening tool to identify those students who are in greater needs of mental health support. So this looks like something like a student survey where they answer questions, and then we can, and you know, this information is you know, kept in house, is confidential, not shared as part of any student record, but it just helps our mental health staff identify who the students are at risk so that we know that we can target them. You know, like just because we're still deciding, is it going to be in person, is it going to be virtual? A screening tool can be done either way. If we're just trying to figure out who is at risk at this moment in time, that is something that can be done virtually or in person. Another idea that has come up through the group is the possibility of exploring mentor programs. So one idea that's really important in terms of supporting students' mental health and social emotional lives is that each kid feels connected to someone in the building. And at the elementary and primary level, that is more assured because you're a student who's with primarily one individual through most of the day. But again, at the secondary level, you're cycling for short periods of time between many adults. And it can be the case that a student isn't well connected to really anyone. And that student can be struggling, and we want to make sure that they're connected to someone. So some ideas that our staff may pursue is what's called relationship mapping. And this is when you, as a staff, reflect on who you have close relationships with as far as students, so that you can make sure like all students have a close relationship with someone. Or also we may just pursue like a mentor program where, say, the freshman students are connected with mentors at the junior or senior level, so that they're at least connected to one close classmate. So that's an idea that we'll kind of look into the logistics of throughout the rest of the summer. Some other core ideas that we have are just communicating a relaxed and flexible transition. So what we want to do is make sure that we're giving students and staff the time they need to adjust. So we want to really try to just take the pressure off and discourage rushing back to rigorous academics. So as opposed to really trying to get through the standards right away on day one, we want staff to really kind of focus on community building. And so for some teachers, this may mean going through their content area. Say you're a science teacher, you may just be showing them, you know, like an interesting demonstration or video or things like that. But what we don't want is academic stress and pressure to be yet another stressor when students transition back. We just really want to communicate a relaxed and flexible transition. Our group is also brainstorming just some opening week activities. So right now we have students returning to school for 2 days, and then it's the weekend. So they'll be returning on a Thursday and Friday. And so what we'd like for staff to do is incorporate some mindfulness and self-care activities for students. And perhaps have some of our counselors go around to student groups to share important ideas and information. And two other just ideas that the group has come up with is, so one thing, again, we know we can't do is provide additional professional level mental health staff. You know, we've already created our budget and so on. But what we're gonna try to do is look for just more intern support. We had a really successful year with a school psychology intern last year. And we also work with North River to have social work interns. So we're gonna try to find any additional interns that we can who just be able to help us out and get more hands on deck. And last up, an important idea that we don't want to lose is just providing support for staff themselves. So we just want to arrange some self-care and wellness activities throughout the year to convey the importance of staff mental health. Give them time to just spend time with each other. And again, this can be virtually or in person, but just to talk about their experience and any issues that they're having, and make sure that they understood that, you know, the district is looking out for staff members as well as the students, and give them the time they need to adjust. So those are just some of the initial ideas that the group has kind of come up with. And again, we'll be using the next month and a half to figure out what that, what exactly it'll look like. And, you know, as Jackie said, a lot of that will be dependent on whether or not it's remote, virtual, or a hybrid model.
Awesome. James, can I just ask that, I know we're going to be reorganizing the subcommittees, but can you just keep whoever is on the SEL subcommittee updated, and maybe have a little meeting before everything's finalized, just to make sure that, you know, where they represent SEL, that everybody's on board? Is that okay? I know that you guys know what you're doing, just to, you know, make sure that everybody's on the same team. And then, but it will probably get presented to us again before the start of the school year. Would you do that?
Yeah, certainly.
Excellent. And then my only other thought is, once it is finalized, if we could maybe either send it out to people or put it on the website, just so that parents are aware of what the expectations are.
Absolutely.
Or if it pertains to them, you know, however you want to do it. Does anybody else have any questions?
James, I have one quick one. It goes back to more the committee itself. And I know you already have one, so I don't know how far you are, and I don't want to derail anywhere that you've gotten with it. And I know you're working with surveys, and we'll hear some results later on, and we'll have some next time we meet or whatever. But is there any thought, and if it's possible, to maybe adding a parent or two from the district as part of the committee, and maybe a student? I mean, that might be working with Dr. Sullivan and Mr. Bourne on adding a student, but an incoming senior would maybe make the most sense. You don't want to go too young for a student, but maybe they could identify some who they feel could contribute. They worked with that group the most. It's just a thought. I don't know how far along you are. I don't want to derail anything that started, but I think some parent input of, I mean, I wouldn't suggest any of the members of the committee, because I think that's too like double-edged, but I think maybe looking to see any parents that may be interested or students that may be interested. I'm not, maybe no more than two each, because you don't want to go nuts with it, but it's just a thought I had talking to some people.
Right. What about even the, to just go off of what Chris said, the CPAC, I mean, the chair or something of the CPAC, maybe they would have ideas as well.
I can't suggest that, so.
Oh. I got you.
So I don't know what you thought, James, about like adding potential parents or a student.
Yeah, so I think, Chris, I think that's a good point. I mean, always expanding the number of perspectives to a conversation is always good. And it's always helpful to get that parent input, as well as student input. So certainly, yeah. So like I said, it's an active committee. We have another meeting this week, but we'll have subsequent meetings before the end of the summer. So I can make sure to just sort of broaden the participation, just because they may be able to, introduce some ideas that we hadn't considered.
Right, different perspective.
Right. So I appreciate the thought, and yeah, that's something I can get going for the subsequent meeting that we do.
Okay. Thanks, James.
Just a comment about going forward. I think too, like coming up with an FAQ or something to that. Like I'm thinking a lot about how do you care for people emotionally, and how do you take care of their emotional well-being? And one way is to reduce anxiety around the unknowns. And when people feel uncertain, and this has to do with logistics, like we can talk all day and wave if I cut out about all these great plans. And James, like you can tell I know from working in the field that what you just shared is full of hard work and well thought out intentions. But being human, logistics come first. Like, how many people are going to be in my class? Is the science teacher going to come to me, or are we moving to the science teacher's class? what's the first day of school going to look like? When are the mask breaks happening? All of that, teachers themselves have lots of things that they're wondering. So I almost, again, going back to the like cart before the horse, not that I don't want the district planning for these things. And maybe this is coming in the next section, Peter, when you talk about this. So, but I just think we need to be really clear, and maybe FAQ is a way to do that before opening. Like you know, we've used that format in the past and people have seemed to respond well to just sort of general questions, frequently asked questions. I don't know people's thoughts.
I think that sounds pretty good. Does anybody else have any ideas or thoughts?
I think it's good, but I think we're just like partway through what we're
Right.
here to hear, like to know today. And I feel like that until we hear the more information that Peter is going to present, I feel like we're kind of have a lot of questions because we don't know that part yet. So maybe after he speaks, that maybe we might have another little piece to our puzzle that is will help make it have more sense than it does right now for us.
Very good, Lisa. I agree too. I think that will maybe tell a lot.
I think as we get closer and clearer as to what's actually going to happen, you narrow down the different aspects of all of it, SEL, everything else, because it narrows down, or at least the school year is going to start with. You know what I mean? You'll know what you're going into.
So James, you know what we're thinking about. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just the committee will continue to meet and continue to refine, because again, what things look like at the high school by necessity are going to look different than what they will look like at Beaverbrook. So we'll be working that out over the next month and a half, and we'll make sure to keep folks updated, and on your advice, we'll just broaden the number of voices at the table.
Excellent. Yeah, and if you could go to the SEL subcommittee and CPAC, and anyone else you find that might be helpful, that would be great.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on now to the, Peter, are you taking this next portion over, the initial fall school reopening guidance plan? Okay, perfect. Peter, please.
So what I want to really describe to you is more, you're going to be underwhelmed and disappointed by this item, because we do not have a ton of answers yet, and not many places do, and even some of the places that do have the answers, you know, we don't know what the projected path of this pandemic will bring for us. So there isn't a lot of clarity at this point. However, as you know, we're supposed to develop 3 different plans. One is full in-person learning for everybody. The second is a hybrid model where some of the students are in, some of the students are at home. The students that are at home are on an A day or a B day, or vice versa, with the students that are in school, and the students at home are learning remotely. And then the third is completely remote. And as was noted earlier, even if we start with one model, we could go, let's say the news is really good and we go back full time, or the news is that's just not possible and we're able to go back to a hybrid model. We know that we could potentially go to a remote model at any time, dependent on the trajectory of this disease, of this virus. So what we're doing right now are the logistical pieces in what would be a fallback model. It's measuring cafeteria square footage. We have to keep kids to a 3-foot minimum, hopefully more than that, throughout the school day, wearing masks by the guidelines in grades 2 through 12. And so the reason we're tackling this piece first is because these models would have significant budget impacts. For example, we need to order hundreds of desks to make this work. We need to find a way. The biggest obstacle in most districts, I'm hearing, to be quite honest with you, is lunch. How do you, just in terms of square footage and children coming to school, how do you feed them lunch? Because they have to take their mask off to eat lunch, which means you have to be at a 6-foot distance. And previous guidance didn't allow the use of cafeterias or gymnasiums or larger common spaces. Friday afternoon, think at about 4:15, we got an email saying that we would be able to use common spaces in schools in Massachusetts. So we need to get a broader group of eyes and input on all of these possible models, which we will do. In terms of the weeds and the details that need to be determined just in the physical spaces and how schedules might possibly work and what kids may be able to get if we come full on back to school in terms of what their day might look like, recess, lunch, travel pathways in a hallway. There are just physical pieces to this that we need to do the work on in terms of knowing square footage, knowing the students, knowing what the safe paths might be, and then feeding them and getting the recess and then getting them a program through the school day that they want to be here for. One of my fears is that these requirements are going to create such an environment that the day is not going to be what's healthy for kids, socially, emotionally, and mentally. However, we need to do this homework before we know exactly what that looks like, and that's what's happening. And I said, as of Friday, cafeteria spaces were freed up, and that'll change things. So there's work that's being done, and then there's an adjustment, and then work is being redone, and that's what we're talking about right now. The second piece, and there are problems with all of these pieces. Second piece is the hybrid model. The second piece being the hybrid model, meaning kids would be in school and at home. The problems we have with that, and that none of these things are impossible, but there'll be one solution that will emerge as better than the others based on what the virus is doing in our society. And so we've got to work on all three as we get to that point. The hybrid model, some kids would be in school, some kids would be at home. One of the problems with that is that if it somehow doubles your transportation, you're doing half days, there isn't enough money or buses in school systems for models like that. If teachers have their own kids at home, how are they going to teach if the systems around us are in a hybrid model and their kids are home, they have to take care of their own kids? How will teachers be able to teach kids in seats, in desks, in the buildings, and then be able to do an online piece for kids that are home, because that's two different types of lessons that need to be developed. So it might involve kids coming 4 days and teachers not having kids on the 5th day. We're working through those now, and that day would allow teachers the opportunity to create those lessons. We don't know what that looks like. The full remote was done quickly in March. While we were working remotely already, it was done remotely. What improvements can we make to that to make that more engaging for our kids? And hopefully when we do put that together, what will the grading look like? What will the accountabilities look like? People need to move forward with lessons, and we want to do it in a way that gets kids into a routine if we go more remotely, because it hasn't been healthy for them to not be into a routine. And how do you do that when families are at home to best serve the chaos in their homes? Is it a combination of synchronous and asynchronous delivery? And so those are the types of things that need to be worked on with the remote piece. And then all of this needs to be collectively bargained and agreed on with the teachers. And so as we do this work, what we'll do is we will be publishing information on what the possibilities are and in a draft, in a blueprint, because we need to do this initial work so that we can make progress on the conversation, and then public comment. I can imagine that we will have PowerPoints and forums where we do a Q&A, and those FAQs that were talked about are developed from the questions we're getting. Along the way, we need to continue to survey people, and I think that when we finish one survey, that's going to inform the next survey, so we can continue to learn what people are looking for, what would be the best for them, and that can inform the work that we do along the way. And all along, we want to focus on those three elements. And again, I'll get broader input on this, that it's safety first. Then it's the most important thing we're going to be doing is the social emotional piece. And then the academic piece will be part of the vehicle to take care of that social emotional piece. The other piece that I wanted to mention before I just take questions, I lost it, but it'll come back.
Does anyone have any questions?
Peter, I got a couple. So with the hybrid models, can each district kind of construct their own that fits best for them, or is there like a certain one everybody's got to follow?
It's going to, all three of these will be what best fits for each person's district.
Okay.
Having said that, there are 351 districts in the Commonwealth, and part of this process is sharing information between districts to see what other people have developed.
And that might have helped answer the second one I had. It's basically, so I didn't know if the state determines which one of the three Abington goes into, or do you determine which one? I don't want to say you, but I mean, is it a district decision, or is it a state
Great
decision?
question. That's a great question. So my answer as of July 13th is I might go to the committee for a vote. I'm not certain. I know that the commissioner, I'm not certain, but I want to say that again. I know that I've been told the commissioner does not have the authority. Historically, it seemed like the governor does, because that's how we left school and didn't come back. I'm not certain.
Okay, thanks. That was what I had.
So I have a question. So depending on, say if it's half in the class, if it's the hybrid model, is it have to be the same for each school? Is there, as far as I know on the survey, it was students could come for a week and then not come for a week, or it's some days, not days, or whatever. So say we go into that hybrid model, how is it the same? Do you have to adopt the same format for each grade? I don't know, does the high school go 1 week and then not 1 week? And then does the Woodsdale do 2 days and 2 days? Does it have to be the same across the whole district, or can it be different depending on?
It doesn't have to be, but I'm guessing our families would want us to have families going on the same day. So they'd want, if they've got elementary kids or high school kids, all their kids are going to school on the same day. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, high school kids, if they have siblings on the grades, and they all have to be coordinated to be there at the school on the same days.
Probably alphabetically.
Okay.
With a sensitivity to not everybody in a family would have the same last name.
Right. Okay.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Chris may have to leave. He has an 11 o'clock meeting, so I just wanted everyone to know in case he's not here.
I can push it a little bit, but I might not be able to stay too late. Thank you.
I have my questions. I have so many of them, but I think I'm going to wait, because we would be here for another 3 hours if I asked them all. And I just don't think that there are answers yet for all of these questions. But so Chris, yours, all of them that have come up were, like I said, some of the many that I have. I'm trying to be patient with all of it. But I am seeing some school districts already putting out information. I saw Lexington released something, and Rentham, among a few other schools. Are those schools that are putting out those plans, they seem a little bit more permanent than ones that were mentioned before? Are those what they're rolling with unless anything changes? Or are these, again, just another set of temporary plans until next week, and then they're going to change those again? Do you?
What I've heard is that's what they're rolling with. And the piece that I forgot to mention, I apologize, if I could, that the state's looking to, the commissioner has the authority now to reduce the number of days in a school year. So however it is that these districts open, it's likely going to be, I'll be coming back and asking if we should change the school calendar. Because one of the things we'll have to do is spend days, if we come back, either hybrid or all together all at once. There'll be a lot of work that will need to be done on just training around PPE and safety. And then back to what James was presenting about how we're going to best receive students, take care of their social emotional needs and the social emotional needs of each other.
That's one of the things that I had seen with what Lexington had put out was the change in number of days and I'd have to look at our school calendar. I can't remember because I know every district does it differently with half days versus full day professional development. I know some towns are looking to, or have already changed to get rid of their professional development days for the rest of the school year and are front loading and having the kids come back in addition to those 3 days that the state might be granting us to do some planning and reorg before the school year opens. Some districts are taking those those PD days that are sprinkled throughout the year and are pulling them now to the beginning of the year to give as much time for the districts to get ready as possible. Is that something that we would be able to do?
So as you know, our one full day PD is already at the front, and then we have the 1 day for preparation. And the preparations this year, that would be 2 full days for preparation. That moment where we all come back together wouldn't even physically be possible by the guidelines. So we'd likely use those 2. And then we could also potentially think about those half days that are later in the year. But then also, again, the commissioner is releasing some of those days. So I think they should be considered in terms of front loading the way you're suggesting, perhaps after we find out how many days we're going to get from DESE, where I would ask the committee if we could delay the start of school.
Yeah, I think that's just for me as an educator. It's so overwhelming, and I think as many days as possible to plan together amongst teams and grade levels, subjects at the high school level would be super necessary to get the ball rolling, no matter what we're doing.
I just had a couple, comments, questions. About an hour ago, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees put out a document for school committee members on their member roles in reopening of schools. There's some questions in there that might help the committee to just be thinking about what we want to know and ask. But there's a line in here that just, again, I think it was brought up, but it says, since the state has explained that considerable discretion will be given to districts regarding the opening of school, you should work with your superintendent to develop the plan that works most effectively and safety for your children and families. That wording makes it sound like districts have more individual freedoms to craft a plan than we've heard. Not from Abington, just generally, even where I work. Like, we're not hearing, I feel like districts are waiting for a little bit more guidance. So I know you'll be submitting a plan the first week of August, right, to the state, which will include 3 components, 3 options. When do you hear back from them about whether they approve it, and when will we meet or be updated again before that plan is submitted?
So in my mind, that plan is what the commissioner's been calling a stress test. So that it's going to be, I was told, because we still haven't gotten the questions or the form in terms of what questions they're going to be asking us about, that they'll be very general in nature. And so that's due we found out on July 31st. So absolutely, I'm going to want to ask the committee if we can meet. So I have time, at least a couple of meetings before that 31st deadline to get input.
Yeah, I'd like to meet. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but, and I know time is, everyone has other responsibilities, but I feel like we owe it to the community to be transparent and not have email communication go out that says, oh, here's the plan. We've processed your survey results. I want them to hear, like, and I personally, as a committee member, want to hear the ins and outs of what you're submitting to the state. Because if we do have discretion, like, you never know.
Jack, you cut out.
Jack, you want to try it again? Oh, we got you.
I'm getting my Comcast fixed today, so hopefully. Oh, that brings me to my next point. Okay, there's 23 participants here.
You're out again.
Then we need to start practicing. What does it look like for the 23 or 24 of us to be together in our real buildings, socially distanced and masked and everything else? That would be my other comment for the meetings that are coming. And like Danielle, I have 1,000 questions, but I don't want to tie up your time, and I don't think we have answers. But I think we need more meetings to talk about what's happening.
Jackie, did you say that you wanted the next meeting in person?
That's
yeah,
right.
I said there's 23 or 24 of us in this meeting, which is a classroom of kids. So I want to see what we look like in our school, socially distanced and following procedures that we're expecting teachers and kids to do in 6 weeks.
Yes. I think that's a great idea to meet in person next. That's what I would like to do. I think that we should get things back together.
Wendy, you might have to check with the Board of Health though, before
Okay.
we violate anything that's set up for those kind of meetings. I don't know what the restrictions are and how we in public going in. That's all I would just say. Maybe check with them before we schedule. But I'm for having it wherever. So.
And
Okay.
I hear you, Chris, and I'm not frustrated at all with you, but I'm frustrated with in general. Like, think about what we just said, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. But if we can't bring 24 people together and audience members because the Board of Health isn't allowing that in our school building, how are we refilling 600, 700 kids in our buildings?
I agree with, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, I just think like if we need to have a Board of Health member at one of our next meetings, then they need to be here. Or like we need to start getting a little more clarity around what we're doing. And I'm not angry or anything. I feel like maybe what the committee needs to see is the details of the 3 plans that will be presented July 31st. I think we need to continue to meet and talk and have input in those plans before they are submitted.
So let me just, so I agree with you, Jack. Like I agree with you were saying in terms of how can we expect, like I get that general gist of it. But in my opinion, I think at the same time, so for instance, I'm coaching baseball. We can't have 20-something kids. It's not allowed. But I feel like the state feels that when you're in school, that just like youth sports got canceled before school necessarily got canceled, it's kids need the school more than they need the youth sports. So I think that's the thinking where, well, how can we be not allowed, but kids could be allowed? I think that's where some of the thought process might come from.
Except that who's with the kids when they go back? It's 23 or more adults.
Right. I just traveled to like 8 states, went everywhere. So I understand now a lot more where other states are coming from and what they're doing. And I definitely think that we should have a Board of Health member either come to the meeting or give them, like, I don't know what their education is like to give us guidance if they're just, reading something that they got from the state. I mean, I think that we have to kind of push that as well. I'm sorry, Peter.
Yeah, can I just offer a suggestion to the committee? We do what the committee wants. We could set the next meeting up in person by invitation, and then the community hopefully could view it this way. And the problem with opening it up to the entire community is you don't know how many people would show up. So you don't know what environment would be the right size. When we have children come back to school, we know how many kids are going to go into each room. So if there was a way for me to take the library at the high school, at the middle high school, and if cable would be able to help us by videoing this in or wherever we might go so that they could do that, have a meeting of our members and the administration for the purpose of helping us answer some questions and getting into the details. And then the community could log on this way and ask their questions the way they have in the past virtually.
Or why can't the community, what's our capacity for adults that teach at the Abington Middle School? That
Get back.
Try again, Jackie.
Hello.
I think
Hello.
Yeah.
I guess my thing would say, what's the staff population, not just certified staff? How many adults work at the Abington Middle School? And that many adults need to be able to come, whether it's how many adults can we fit in the library socially distanced? Can we spill over to the media room socially distanced? But like, I'm struggling, and this is not Abington specific, but it matters because if Abington's responsible for its own plan in its own buildings, we haven't practiced the plan that we're submitting. We haven't even practiced with real bodies what it would look like. So if I'm working at any school in Abington, I'm wondering, how do we all go back? You're saying we can't host a meeting there, but we're all supposed to report to work and with all the hundreds of kids. So can we think about a way that we work with Abington CAM? If they can stream it to different spaces, it would give us an opportunity to allow, if we know we can only have X amount of community members in, just like we did with town meeting, and let them come in. And if there's overflow, they overflow to a space we're going to ask staff and kids to be in.
So if that's what the committee would like to do, we could certainly do that. In terms of the lift, we can do those things. We would just have to redeploy resources in terms of custodial and technical people that are doing other things. Maybe that's, if I could ask the committee to consider that could we do a meeting like that, which would be a larger meeting before the open, and that then at least the next meeting perhaps could be committee members, and then people could watch this online, just again so that we could control the number of participants at our next meeting.
I mean, why can't we do it in the high school auditorium? Because that would solve everything. The media is right there. And then we have plenty of chairs for everyone to space out. We can even go on the stage if, you know what I mean, just set up on the stage. So
we could do that, but there will be a capacity. And I don't know that we'd reach the capacity if we use the auditorium, because that's a big enough space. I believe, if anybody remembers from town meeting, that's like, do you remember how many people that holds using the 6-foot barrier?
It was either 80 or 100 or 150. I don't think we're going to have that many people.
Okay, so we could use the auditorium and then stream it that way.
I mean, I suggest that. What does everybody else think? Is everyone comfortable going back together? Or
I think I do agree with Jackie that we do have to do that. But I'm okay with baby stepping as well, as long as we have a couple meetings. If we did one together on the smaller side, and then as we get more information, more details. So I'm okay with both, but I do think if we're going to get people back in the buildings, we need to see how that's going to work too.
If I could ask, Terry was raising her hand a second ago.
Right. Go ahead, Terry. Oh, she's on mute. Okay.
I think I just had to wait for Rich. I'm just wondering what we're doing. So for example, Wendy, you traveled out of state. Are there any any requirements, any protocols about self-quarantining? Is that our responsibility or not? You know, is that a responsibility of a principal in a building with staff, with families, with students? Is that, I have no idea. I'm just curious.
So what I could do is I could, if we waited, you know, we're gonna maybe next week we have our next meeting. I could get this plan approved for a meeting by the Board of Health, by the health agent, to approve a plan for us for an in-person meeting. The auditorium's a big place, and I would include what our responsibilities, I would include questions about responsibilities for quarantining in the community.
Can I just say, like, look at how challenging this is. I guess my point is, look at how challenging this is to try to plan a meeting for the 23 people who are here to come in person together. This is the frustration that the community and the world has right now of how are we doing this in 6 weeks live? Are we just gonna, when the calendar turns the page, we're gonna say, let's see how this works? Like, will you be updating us more specifically in the next couple weeks as you know more?
Absolutely. I need to publish this information, and I want to get community input on it.
My last question is, have you heard from local superintendents that surround us where they're leaning or what they're thinking or how soon before they release a plan?
They are as frustrated as all of us, and they have as many questions as we all do. And then remember, all of these plans need to be collectively bargained. And so we're going to do all this work, we're going to get all this input, and where the MTA, ATF, and AEA fall on their opinions are also need to be weighed in here.
And so last question, I promise, the remote learning piece comes to mind because you're talking about so many obstacles, like union bargaining is not a quick, easy thing. We don't know what the numbers when the southern states go back, how that will impact. Are there resources deployed now in Abington to somebody specific who's looking at ways to improve the remote learning experience? Should we need to lean on that in some form?
So we wanted to do the in-person first because that has the biggest budget impacts. The work that's being done about the remote learning is really purchasing additional devices. No matter what we do, parents are going to have the option to keep their kids home, and we're still going to be responsible for their education. So the state is going to be purchasing online resources that people can use use independently. We'll want to compare that to what we're able to do ourselves, and which is what are we able to do and which would be better for kids. And so that comparison work can't be done yet because the state model doesn't exist yet. We need to continue to get this in-person nailed down, then go to the hybrid, then go quickly to the remote to see what that'll look like. That's the third one. I believe it or not, think the all remote is going to be the easiest one to figure out. Just having a discussion about where we're going to meet. You saw the challenges, like you said, about the in-person. Felicia has her, if it's okay for the committee to recognize Felicia and have her be unmuted.
Mhm.
I think I'm unmuted. Thank you. And I think it's important to say that the in-person plan is there's budgetary impacts and there's infrastructure impacts. So the plan really is about counting desks, counting what has to be removed from classrooms, what the instructional piece is the instructional piece, but it's really the logistical hurdles to be overcome. So, an in-person plan that's rolled out is going to be those things, like this classroom can have this many students in it, this classroom can have this many, this is where we're going to, feed the 6th grade or the 3rd grade. So, that's the challenge that's currently being undertaken by the administrative team. That was all.
Thank you, Felicia.
And remember, Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we had changes in what in-person means. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. So I know you said, and I think I knew this, but families have the option of keeping their kids at home for learning regardless. So is that in a more like just a homeschooling way for parents, or is it still going to be like a hybrid model regardless? Like, because there'll be kids in this, if we go back, like kids in the school, and then there'll be remote learning kids. Is it like just on the parents specifically, like they're homeschooling, or are they part of a class that they're kind of remote learning? What will it be?
Good, it's a great question. And we've been told that the school systems will be responsible for that remote learning.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions? Because I think this is still developing, that me every day. Maybe we can put this aside for now, and then Peter, we can get updates and, you know, get together again and set something up so we can all meet and talk about this further. Go ahead.
Could I just have a little bit of direction in terms of our next meeting and the timing for that?
Yes. Do you want to do it after we go through the rest of this?
Whatever
Okay.
the committee would like to do.
All right, because that's probably easier, right, to decide which day and time and everything we do that.
Sure.
Is that okay? Because then we could probably tackle a couple other things and along with it. Okay. So do you all, are we ready to move on to the family survey? Is that okay?
Just have to unmute Sherry.
Oh, Sherry. Sherry, hi.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm going to share my screen with everybody just to go over some of the survey results, which helps to back up what we've been talking about. So.
Rich, can you do a share screen for Sherry?
She has the permissions, but she's got to share the screen.
Oh,
There we go.
thank you.
Can you see it? I can't.
Yes, yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so end of year remote learning survey. So I'm just going to briefly share the overall results from the survey from the end of the year here.
So I'm sorry, Sherry, this is the one
Yes.
that that was originally done to see how remote learning went. And then there was another survey that went out. Are you going to discuss that at another time?
Yes,
Okay.
right. Thanks, Wendy. Let me clarify. So this is the remote learning end of year survey that went out a couple weeks ago for parents, students, and for teachers. The teacher survey was slightly different just because based on needs. So what I'm going to do is share those results. We currently do have an open survey right now, which I want to remind everybody, and I'll remind everybody at the end again, to make sure you take that if you haven't already taken it by tomorrow. And that is for our re-entry going into the fall, just to get a pulse on what people are thinking right now. So I will not be covering that today because that survey is still open. So what I am covering is the remote learning, again, end of year results from parents, teachers, and students. And so the survey questions were, for the first 4 questions, we have parents, students, and teachers that were in alignment. They all agreed that the learning activities evolved and improved over time. They replied that the amount of time that the learning activities took to complete, along with the amount of work, were just right. And all 3 groups were somewhat comfortable with remote learning. So there was a lot of alignment between the 3 groups for the initial questions on the survey. For the second part of the survey, the first question, the top 2 best connections with educators for parents and students were through class video conferencing and email check-ins. For teachers, it was asynchronous learning or pre-recorded learning and email check-ins. For the second question, 73% of the parents and 77% of students thought assignments were easy to submit. In terms of best time for learning, which is our third question there, the best time was 10 to 1, which worked for 51% of parents and 35% of students. For the last question, 91% of the parents had enough devices for students to actively engage in the remote learning. 24% mentioned that they shared devices within the household. So what these results do right now is help us to inform our decision and our conversation. We had about 2,500 comments that are still being analyzed. So between all three surveys, those are still being analyzed. And as we digest this information, it will help to drive future surveys, like Peter was saying, and also planning for the fall. We currently have, as I had mentioned earlier, we currently have the other survey open for our reentry plan for the fall. And again, that's due tomorrow. So if you haven't taken it already, if you could do that, that'd be great. And we will be sending out more surveys this summer so that we can keep our pulse on this ever fluid event so that we can plan. Any questions?
Be interested to see the next survey results.
Right.
Well, thank you, Sherry, for that, for sharing that information.
Peter, can I ask a question about remote? I maybe combining these results with the last thing you went over. So remote learning, let's say, or even the hybrid model, would the intention be for it to be set up the way it was in terms of timing, or would it be more you're working 6 hours? I'm going to use a round number of 6 hours. I understand each school building is a little different, but you're doing your schoolwork during the 6 hours that you're home from 8:40 to 2:40, whatever it ends up being.
So in subsequent surveys, we need to ask that question, because my belief is that people want us to get their kids more into a regular school routine in terms of timing.
Yeah.
That's my belief, and I think a survey would perhaps confirm that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you would teach what needs to be taught when you're just everything's abridged, in essence. Like, what do they need? I mean, to your point, at some point, they need to get into lessons, and I know it's not immediate, but it needs to happen for them to grow. And how do you do that if everything, like, how do you give a full lesson if everything's abridged?
So perhaps, and I don't know this because we're not there yet, but one solution would be to, it's unfortunate we can't just have a camera in a classroom and do the hybrid model where kids come in and the camera is asynchronously broadcasting for the kids that can't be there.
So we can't. I didn't know we could not do that.
There aren't enough cameras in the world right now for us to be able to set that up, and because of the situation we're in, we looked into that and ordering those and trying to set that up. These computers just don't provide an adequate pan of a classroom where you'd be able to do that. Perhaps the model will include an asynchronous that can be recorded so that if the student can't be there for the asynchronous session, they can see it later. But I do know that getting students into a routine is what I believe is best for kids, and I believe that's what our parents would want for their children. So that some sort of, this is the time that class is held, would be beneficial. And I don't think that's going to work for everybody because of different homes where, both parents are working, or you have a single parent home where the parent is working and the child may not be able to be in front of a computer at 8 o'clock in the morning. Or maybe they share devices. Again, we've made some purchases for technology. Should we get to that remote plan to help assist with that? And I'm assuming, or I'm imagining that any model for remote learning that we put in place in the future would be hopefully synchronous and asynchronous, perhaps recorded for those people that can't be there.
Any other questions? Because I mean, this is just ongoing anyway, so it's really great to see these results, and it's all going to go hand in hand. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry, would you say something? I thought you raised it.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I had a quick comment, if that's okay. So just going back to the results of the survey, Sherry, thank you for sharing those. Everything seemed right as far as what I would have expected the students to respond with, but I just wanted, and I know we all know this, I just want to be careful about taking those results as truth, just because I know for at least high school students from those that I teach and those that I know in Abington, and mostly just human beings looking for the path of least resistance and having to do the least amount of work possible and just wanting to get the job done and the grade in there, is that I can only speak from experience from my own student and those that I have taught, is I would think that most of them would have checked that they had just the right amount of work, even though it might have been too little. I know for my son, he was done with his 8th grade work in about 3 or 4 hours total for the whole week. And I know that it was stressful, and the social and emotional piece is there, and that they can't handle the amount of work that they would have been doing in the regular classroom. But I'm guessing that all the students picked it was just about right, and kind of thinking, yes, overall, you know, they were happy with that, to be able to sleep in until noon and then maybe do an hour worth of work in a lot of their classes and then just kind of go on with their day. So I know that we would all assume that anyways, but just to take those numbers with a grain of salt. And just, I know for some classes, some teachers, the work might have been too much, some might have been too little, and I know we'll work on finding that happy medium. But the students reporting out, I'm guessing that they were saying that it was just about right because they're hoping for not much more, even though they could do a little bit more.
Peter?
I think the accountability piece is a major part of it in terms of engagement too. Just just because you're engaged doesn't mean it's meaningful engagement. And how do we measure the quality of the engagement and the quality of what students are doing? Because when you go to pass fail or in and check the box, you know, you do lose a critical component to what we do.
Okay. Again, thank you, Sherry, for that information. And then we'll get updates probably at the next meeting of how the survey that's out right now, how that went.
Hopefully, yes.
Thank you. Excellent. Any more questions on that? Comments? So the next thing on the agenda is just some informational items. And one that is super duper important is Abington wins the Sportsmanship Award. So they won, the Abington High School has been named the winner of the South Shore League Clark Chatterton Sportsmanship Award for the 2019-20 school year. And this is actually the 3rd consecutive year that Abington High School has been the SSL overall sportsmanship winner. So good job, Abington.
Congratulations to everybody involved.
Yes, pretty awesome. And then second really important item is that we have the superintendent, Peter Shaver, has appointed Jessie Clements as the assistant principal at Abington High School. I know that I saw her. Hi, Jessie. Can we unmute Jessie for a minute? She's back with us. Jessie, it's nice to meet you. Thank you, because I hadn't met you before. So Peter or Jessie, anybody want to say anything? Did you send anything? I've been away, so I don't know. Has she been announced yet, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. Good job.
Hey, Wendy, do you mind if I?
Oh. Just happy to be here. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead, Jessie. Do you have anything to say? Where you come from? You want to give us like a little brief?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's been like, my history's been in writing anyway, but I was at Durfee in Fall River the last 5 years. So coming from a building of 2,100 students down to less than 600 is going to be different, but it's, I taught in Carver for 10 years. So Carver is a very similar district to Abington. And so I'm excited. Just like I said in the beginning, just the first 2 weeks There's plenty to do. And so I'm just excited to be here. So thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you. We hope you enjoy all your minutes here. And you'll be working with Mr. Bourne as well. So,
Wendy, do you mind if I just say one thing before we?
of course.
So I just wanted to, the last meeting we talked about, I know James ran through a thing on the extended school year program. And so I just, there was some discussions I saw some surveys as a parent. And I just want to thank Peter and James on working through the different communications, taking info as we go. And I know, James and Peter, I don't know how many, but I know there are students learning in the building during the extended school year. So I was just want to thank you for doing as much as you could for the town, for those kids to be able to get in there and get some in-person instruction for these 4 weeks.
So, I was thinking about that a little bit as we were talking about our next meeting and getting a little bit of practice with this in person as a district on a much smaller scale. James has done that, and he's done a good job of getting our summer program going at the Beaver Brook. And I think, although there are, I think we usually get 80 some, and James can correct me now or later, we usually get 84, 85 in the summer. And I think James told me on Friday we're at 70-ish, James. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We had definitely anticipated a big drop in the amount of students who would participate, but in fact, that didn't actually happen. We are a little lower than we would usually have, but by and large, we're very close to the typical summer enrollment. And
Well, so that's very telling. Is that 70, that's everyone that's in the school or also doing, remote learning?
so right now, it's a combination of all.
Okay.
So right now, we have about 30 to 40 students who are coming in person, and they're in very small groups, and their arrival and departure times are staggered. Starting week 3, which will be July 20th, we're actually expecting another crew of about 20. So by the end of the summer, we'll have 50 or 60 students who in person, and then there will still be that remaining 20 or so who will be continuing to get virtual the entire time. So a good number of enrollment, a good enrollment this year, and we're getting most of them in the building at some point over the summer. And students seem very happy to be back, and the staff members who are participating are really appreciative to just be there with the kids. So it's a nice experience. And then just one little note is that in terms of the guidance we've got for special education, a lot of what DESE is recommending is prioritizing students with significant needs and preschoolers for in-person instruction. So this is good experience for us to get ready for that arrangement in the fall.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we want to establish the next school committee meeting now, along with speaking about how we're going to go with the different hybrids? All right, we don't do that offline. I just want to make sure that it's not to be offline, that we do it right here, right now.
I just want to, if I could ask the committee just to give me some direction on our next meeting. I do not think in a week I'll be able to come back with all 3 options figured out, but I could report out on everything I do have to that date. But it's up to the committee in terms of when and how we next meet.
Okay, so July 31st is when you have to present it to DESE.
Correct.
Okay, so and then I'm sure, you guys know what you're doing, so the majority will be intact, but if there are any little changes, we could do that within a few days before you actually have to present on the 31st.
Yeah, and I don't think that what we submit on the 31st, we can make adjustments from that. So okay. I don't know that's not written on stone tablets to DESE. It's gonna have to be. I think it's gonna have to be as thoughtful as humanly possible, and we're gonna collaborate and talk to everybody we can. I don't want to take away from the need to get that right. But I also want to relieve people a little bit that I know we'll be able to make adjustments a month from the start of school. I think what needs to happen is sometime in the first couple weeks of August, we need to tell parents what we're doing so they can plan.
Definitely. So would about the 23rd give you enough time, or would you like to push it to the 27th? And how is everyone with dates?
Sooner would be better for me, if
Okay.
it's okay with the committee, only because as I get input, adjustments potentially would need to be made.
Right. I'm good
And
with
there's
that.
nothing lost in meeting sooner than meeting again. You know what I mean?
Yep. All right. So how about, because you said a week wouldn't be enough time. So do you want?
I'm sorry. So I don't think a week will be enough time to get the whole thing together, but I
Okay.
could certainly give you more information in a week.
Okay. Any thoughts on how you guys want to do this?
I'm away next week, so I won't be able to meet in person.
Okay. So do you want Peter to should we do like a subcommittee and have a couple people meet with Peter? Or do you want to just get his instructions or directions on how he's going to proceed with this as we go, in an email? And then we can meet the following week, maybe? Jackie?
I'm more
Evening,
concerned
Chris?
about the community hearing I want I don't want to plan, even though the plan could be changed, will be changed most likely. I want to hear the results of the survey that we're waiting for that tells us what most of our parents would like to see. So I'd like to hear those survey results. I'd also like the community, I'm sure by watching or hearing this meeting today, they can see how incredibly complicated and overwhelming this is and how hard our school department is working against conditions that are, unless you have a magic wand, I don't really know how you pull it off, but we have to. And I guess the thing that I'm really stuck on is I can't get on board. What we send to the state and what we approve on paper is so different than what happens in real life. And I need I need to see what it looks like in real life somehow. Beyond summer school is a great first step, but classrooms they're not having 20-something kids in a summer school classroom right now. And that's not what's going to happen for us when we return, and time is not on our side. So unless we're going to report out to families that school's start is delayed, that we're not starting that Thursday and Friday, I guess I want to know, I want us to meet even next week sometime about the plans, baby step in our plans, and then hopefully again before the final plans get submitted would be my preference.
Okay, so the survey ends tomorrow. For Sherry, the survey ends tomorrow for what people are their ideas are on how we're going to proceed next year. Can we, Peter, send out some additional information? I mean, like just the survey, just to let them know again through email, and then can somebody put it on like the PTO pages and everything?
A reminder went out this morning.
Okay.
A reminder went out
Perfect.
this morning asking people to complete the survey for tomorrow's deadline.
Awesome. And maybe you can throw it on your Twitter page. That would be awesome. And then we can put it on Facebook as well. So can we get raw data from you? I know you don't need to make it pretty or anything, Sherry, just so that we can start looking at it a little bit for the results that you get. I know that you have other things on your plate, so I don't know if it's easy enough to send us, just raw data, not all pretty in a graph and everything. You don't have to do that, just so that we can get some idea of where people are going with this.
Preliminary results.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Preliminary results is what you're
Yes.
looking for.
Yeah, if
Well,
that's okay.
If the survey closes on the 14th and we're talking about meeting next week, at least maybe not all of the comments wouldn't be able to be digested, but I imagine you'd be able to just report out on how people answered.
Right,
Correct.
that's what I want to see before Lisa leaves. And this way we have some ideas and some ways to digest this. And then we can meet again. So Lisa, you're on vacation all next week?
Yes.
Okay, so is anyone, and you, Peter, I know that you want to meet as soon as possible. So can we have a meeting and then for next week, and Lisa, you not be there? How? And
That's fine.
with that? Okay. So does anyone want to meet on like the 20th or 21st? Is anyone available?
21st, I could do. 20th.
Okay.
I guess would it be daytime, evening?
It doesn't matter to me. Should we set this up so that we're at the auditorium for this next meeting?
Pending a review of the Board of Health, like I'll submit.
Okay, good idea.
And I think realistically, we might need to have us meet first with it streamed, and then the following meeting allowing community members. I don't know if we can pull off that in a such quick turnaround time.
Right.
And they may say you can't pull it off at all, which I would then say, then how do you expect us to submit a plan for kids to return into those buildings?
Right.
So you're saying the 21st?
Does the 21st work for everyone? If we say, potentially, if we say, I don't know if nighttime's better, if we set 8 o'clock.
Yeah, so I mean, I can do daytimes. 2 hours kills me. I'm gonna be in trouble later on today with work stuff. So if it was an hour, I can do like daytime, but it doesn't sound like it's gonna be that way. So if it's gonna be longer, I'm gonna have to do it in the evening, or I can like dial in and be something, but I can't promise you. I don't know what work's gonna be like, but I just know losing 2 hours is tough during the middle of the day.
I agree, and I think the school department needs all the hours they can. This is time away from them not working on what they need to work on. So is anyone opposed to pushing back to normal 7 o'clock?
Nope. Not if it's on the 21st.
Okay.
Okay, so, all right, so let's decide, let's do the 21st, Tuesday, and we will say that we're going to meet on the video camera for now, but if, or, you know, because you're going to talk to Marty, the health agent, and he'll tell you if it's okay if we meet together. Is that how you want to handle it?
So this first meeting is this 7 o'clock meeting just completely virtual, or is this the committee members want to meet in person and broadcast it? Which do you want?
It might be easier, Jackie, where Lisa's away, and if she wants to, you know, if you have a little bit of time, I don't know where you're going, but if you want to get on the computer, would it be best just to make it easier for now, the 21st, we do it virtually, and then we can decide after that, you know, regular meeting and bring everybody in. So does that sound okay? I know we want to get back to, you know, things as soon as possible, but people might be a little wary being around me too, because I've been away. So I want to give people.
I just think we need an in-person meeting before we send off our plan that talks about how we're bringing people together in person.
I agree with you. Yes. Is that okay? So for now, we're meeting on the 21st to discuss, you know, the results and what our ideas are. And should we have like a little, do you want a little subcommittee to talk with Peter, or separately too, or are we all just doing this together? I'm
not
doing it together.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time between now and the next date.
Right.
So they have their hands full and will come to us with whatever they have to that point, is what I'm
good
guessing.
with that. I just want to make sure everybody's involved and happy. All right, so that's the plan, 7 o'clock on the 21st of July, virtual meeting.
So Wendy, or maybe anybody, so just so I'm clear, so on that meeting on the 21st, the topics would be the results of the survey, if we have them, from what parents would like to see, and then preliminary breakdown of the 3 prospective plans, right?
Yep.
And what they might look like.
Yep.
Right.
Well, as much as we can give you. I mean, it's the only thing people are going to be working on. So as much as we can give you.
All right, and I would just like to see, I know, you know, it's going to be virtually so everybody can see it, but if we could get the results and the preliminary breakdown ahead of time so that we can come back to you with any suggestions and ideas.
Yep.
That
So, and, you know, my reason for meeting next week and trying to give as much information as possible is that still leaves another week. And I'd rather push it and be aggressive on this than in the last week have 3 different plans that are a mess, and then we've lost time because time is not on our side.
Right. We want Abington represented, so we don't want to look bad.
And Sherry, can you send us the comments from today's survey results so we can see the individual comments on how families felt about remote learning?
Hi, Jackie, I'm still going through the results. There's like 2,500 comments.
Wow.
Can
Can we
I can,
have access to them?
yes.
That would be great. I would love to see that too. Excellent. Anything else anybody has to say? There's some informational items, but I think that they're all pretty self-explanatory. So
I know everybody's pressed for time, but I would be remiss in doing my job if I didn't just say winning the Sportsmanship Award any year is a big deal. The fact that Abington won it 3 years in a row is a testimony to a play on words. It's a team effort because from the high school administration, including the athletic director, to the coaches, to the assistants, to the players, to the spectators, you don't win those things unless everybody's in alignment.
well said, definitely. Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree.
Is this going to be posted somewhere, the Abington Sportsmanship Award, so everyone can see
It's
it?
been announced. It's been announced
Okay,
and
perfect.
published. Yep.
I'm going to catch up with everything today, I swear. All right, everyone. Well, I want to thank you all for attending today, and we will see you on the 21st.
Motion to adjourn, Wendy.
Yep, thank you. Would anyone like to make the motion to adjourn?
I will.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.